Okay. We should be good to go.
Okay, it's 5:31, calling the Information Systems Committee to order. And tonight, I'd like to start off the agenda by having Mr. Patrick Hickey speak to us from Love Insurance. It's time for our insurance renewal. And the one thing that has come up is that we do not have any type of cyber insurance. And I'd like him to explain some of the details on that, the importance in some of the other communities, what they're doing. Patrick, are you there?
I think he's on mute right now. I see him there, but
I see the number.
I think he needs unmuted, don't think, Andrew?
And I should be unmuted.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. You know, a lot of entities have cyber insurance or are getting involved with cyber insurance. And, you know, there's a little difference in this kind of insurance than what you get for other types of insurance. It is divided up between what we call first-party coverage and what we call third-party liability. And perhaps the biggest exposure really is in the first-party coverages. The biggest type of claim we're seeing against public entities is ransomware, where somebody takes over your computer system and demands, you know, money in order to return it. The other one, some of the ones around here that have caught some attention are phishing scams, where the city of Twinsburg offered up the social security numbers of all its employees, creating the need to buy, credit reports and things like that for their employees. City of Aurora had an interesting situation where their electronic fund transfers were redirected to a third-party account. And what makes that one so interesting is that they defeated two-party authentication. So the city of Aurora, I believe, had, I'm not sure of all the exact details, but they were sending the money out in amounts of $100,000. And they ended up with over seven figures rather, being transferred not to where it was supposed to go, but in separate $100,000 lumps. They did get the FBI in and were able to recoup that money. Twinsburg did have to spend some pretty good change in order to take care of the breach report they had. So what does insurance do in this situation? The cyber insurance can pay the costs that you might face for notification costs if you do have a breach of personally protected information, personal identifiable or personal health information. They can also pay the cost of the credit reports. It can pay the cost of the forensics accounting to see if you did in fact have a breach that arises to the need to tell everybody about it and therefore encourage the other costs. We tell people you don't have a breach, you have an incident. Because once you commit to having a breach, then you're using language within the scope of a law that requires a notification. You do take money using credit cards. I believe that you use a third-party provider. What we found is that most of those third-party agreements still put the burden back on the entity. So in other words, you hire them to collect your money for you, and all they're doing is collecting your money on your transaction. The transaction being paying the water bill, paying a recreation membership, or whatever that happens to be. Okay, so if that data gets hacked at the credit card company, they probably have a liability limitation in their agreement so that if they were negligent in causing that, there's a limit to how much they have to pay. The rest of the burden is on you. Because under the PCI compliance part of this thing, it is your transaction. It's your product, so to speak, that they're buying. And then you have situations like happened at Coventry local schools, where some sort of virus that apparently is mafia connected got into the computer systems, and they were lucky. They were only had to shut down for one day, and Neonet managed to get them out of that issue. We have had a couple other cyber incidents and minor things with some of our customers where they were able to get out of them pretty easily. One was a ransom demand where they want it paid in Bitcoins, but they're able to put the last backup on and that worked. However, since that time, cyber criminals are getting more sophisticated. They'll get on your system, they'll wait 6 months, maybe longer, so that whatever they put on evades your backups, and then they'll put out the ransom demand, and then you're unable to get rid of that ransom demand by putting on a backup. And then you have the cost of the ransom demand if it has to be paid, the attempt to try to avoid it. You have the cost of recreating the data should you not be able to get it back. There is a city in Florida that had a ransom attack and they paid a $600,000 ransom, or their insurance company did, because they couldn't solve the problem and then had to buy over $2 million worth of new computers. You also have the issue that some of the things that you do are run by computer systems. And I could be wrong on this, but do you read your water meters by automatically?
They're done with a laptop at the present time. It's mobilized.
So, you do that. You have computerized operations, I'm sure, in your water plant. Those things can also get damaged or caught up by, cyber hacking, as well as your street lights, your red light computerization, things like that. So you have a lot of different things can be exposed out there. And a lot of those types of issues can be handled by cyber coverage. So cyber coverage is when everything fails. And we have a lot of times where we have IT people who say, well, we've got you covered, we're taking care of this. It could be your own internal IT people. It could be a firm that you hire. And of course, we do suggest that you check your agreements for any types of hold harmless or liability limitations in those agreements that limit the amount of damages that could come about if they screw up. The other thing I say a little bit tongue in cheek is that while your IT people may be very smart, they are almost always reacting to something that happened. Okay, in other words, the smarter that the defense gets, the smarter the offense has to be in order to penetrate it. In terms of, we had a situation going on in Ohio where most of the superintendents of school districts, there was an email sent on their behalf advising that they changed their payroll information and a number of school districts fell to that scam. Those were small claims, $3,000, $4,000 claims, where in some instances, paychecks were sent to the wrong place and money not recovered. In a lot of other instances, they caught it and were able to stop payment and fix the situation. So as the cyber situations do brew, and I try to use examples of entities around you to show that it's something possible that could happen to the city of Ravenna. And the city of Ravenna could purchase a cyber coverage to cover some of those or all of those scenarios. Cyber policies are not identical. So we try to put in place a cyber policy that targets the things that you're concerned about more so than maybe some of the things you're not concerned about. Obviously, the more areas you cover, some cyber policies will pay to replace your computers themselves. Some will only pay for the software. So you do have a difference in terms of how things could be paid or what could be paid for. And so that's why we try to tailor coverage. So that's really the message that I have is I think it's something that you should consider. I think you have some vulnerabilities, but it's up to you to decide whether they rise to the level of the need for insurance. I can tell you that we can insure a number of cyber types of issues that can happen. And if you're willing to complete some applications, we can get some pricing and tell you what the cost of that would be or quantify it. And from that point on, it becomes your decision.
Brian, do you have anything to add?
Well, no, I just appreciate Patrick coming in because I was starting to write down some notes and try to explain this. And I was just like, there's just no way. I don't know enough about this, but I did recognize the fact that we didn't have it. And that's what just really kind of threw me off. And, pretty much any other place I've been to government-wise has some sort of cover. Some are better than others, but is that right, Patrick? I mean, most cities have some kind of coverage, don't they?
Well, some cities have. really depends upon the insurance program you're with. Some insurance programs include it. Some include a very minimal cyber coverage where people think they have cyber coverage, but what they have is a low limit on the expenses of handling a breach. So a lot of companies are tossing in $50,000 worth of coverage, which doesn't take you anywhere.
Okay.
One of the things that cyber coverage does include, I talk mostly about first party liability. That means money you have to expend, but they can also come in and defend you on a third party claim where somebody feels that they were damaged because of a cyber incident at the city. Their reputation was harmed because certain information was released, or they feel that something that happened there that was under your control caused them some other type of financial harm. We do not see a lot of third party liability claims. Matter of fact, I haven't seen one yet, but we have seen the first party claims.
So on the agenda, we have just the general renewal, right, of our annual insurance
Yes.
policy. So that I would assume I would vote to move forward. This is just a discussion at this point, right, of cyber insurance. And I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see more of the details, what the options are and how much they cost and so forth. But I do believe we are exposed at the moment. And I think it's something we really need to look into.
And I hope this becomes a larger conversation, because the insurance should really just complement whatever we're doing here. So in terms of IT security, I'm hoping this kind of catapults us into a larger discussion of backups and things along that nature that possibly Gary could help us when we get to that next agenda item. But Gary could kind of help us walk us through some of those items with quality IP if we run into those or if we choose to go down that path. But this isn't to me at least, and Patrick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't an end-all solution that just says, okay, we've got insurance, we don't need to do anything else.
You're correct, because insurance can only pay the bill. It can't deal with the hassle of having to put everything back together again.
Or to prevent it from happening to begin with.
Yes. One of the things you're going to find is that on most of the cyber questionnaires on an entity as large as you, they're going to want to know about what you're doing for cybersecurity. And the answers to those cybersecurity questions will have an impact on your pricing.
I was
So
just
the more
wondering,
you're doing, the better the pricing that we're able to get.
yeah, I was wondering if it would be, a discount if we bundled up some more insurances, almost like when you get your homeowners, your car insurance, and, from one place, then you can get a little bit of a discount off of that.
Yes and no. Okay. Sometimes there are some independent cyber programs out there that just give good pricing. Okay. But my experience has been, if you don't have enough controls in place, they're not going to quote you, period. Because if they don't feel you have some, they're not going to take a risk on what they feel is a foregone conclusion. So if you're not doing firewalls, changing passwords, updating programs, things like that, running backups, then you're going to find a carrier not interested, or you're going to see the pricing be much higher than it needs to be.
So it sounds like what we need is a more holistic approach. We need to know what the insurance company, your insurance company would expect in a security prevention package by our IT to help us minimize the cost of the premium and also minimize our potential for becoming a target.
What I think might be helpful is there's some insurance companies that have a very involved application. By that, I mean lots of questions. And that really tells you the areas that they're interested in. Whether you go with that insurance company or not, just reviewing that application will tell you a number of hot buttons that the insurance companies have. The one carrier that we were using, we're moving business away from them, had a very involved application, and they gave some pretty good pricing, but their rates now have gone up 50% because the losses have started to come in. And they're a pretty selective underwriting company. That's Travelers, by the way. So, Travelers might be one that we would look at, but their application does ask a number of good questions. I think that would, on all areas of the cyber coverage, and what could help direct you a little bit. in
What
your
about this Brett company, the one that we got our regular insurance from? Do they offer us the cyber as well?
I believe they offer it to a secondary market, not to part of the regular municipal program.
Okay.
Cyber is kind of developed on its own, away from other programs.
Gotcha.
I mean, we do Evolve. Sometimes we get best pricing as a London placement. Evolve is one of the ones that we use, and they use a London market. And we have a few other programs that are pretty good. The biggest difference in the programs really right now is whether one will replace just the software or they'll replace the softwares and computers that are damaged or the hardware.
Any other questions?
So if it's all right with you guys, if I can send Brian a few applications and then let you guys take it from there. And as we get those back, we'll try to quantify the exposure. At the same time, you can use some of the applications. Brian, I'm talking about a more involved application than one I sent you initially.
Yeah, because we did do that previous one. Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I mean, Pat, do you want Patrick to hang around just for a little bit longer if there's any questions on the regular insurance as well, Cheryl? I mean,
Might as well. I don't have the regular insurance policy on the Information Systems Committee, but
Oh, okay. So that's that love insurance, the first bullet.
Yeah, it is on the agenda and in the packet.
oh, okay, yes. Sorry.
So, but yeah, that's great for cyber. I think it'll get us rolling.
I mean, I'm in favor of moving forward the renewal of our, overarching policy. We just have to wait and see how fast things move for the cybersecurity. That may take another month before we can vote on it.
It might, yes.
Amy, anything from you? Okay, so we'll move the renewal forward and continue to investigate further on the cyber, get some more information for the cyber insurance, and then make a decision at a later date on that. Does anyone have anything else to add? All right, then the next thing on the agenda, something that we've kind of discussed a little bit here and there, is the IT consultation. We have the contract with Quality IP for a lot of our IT products and taking care of things for us. And I know that there was some heavy discussion on bidding that out, RFPs. Kind of felt like we didn't have anybody on staff or even with us to really be a strong IT person to kind of oversee the things from Quality IP or to even be able to write an RFP. We've been able to talk with Gary Bishop, who does IT for the city of Kent. And I would like Gary to answer any questions that you guys have as far as his expertise and what he does. We've discussed bringing him on as a part-time consultation basis only to kind of oversee what Quality IP gives us or recommends to us, or using his knowledge, being that go-between, especially on the larger projects. We're looking at doing cameras citywide, some very large projects that I feel like we don't have the experience on staff to handle. And I don't want to just take Quality IP's suggestions. I'd like another opinion on things and someone that we could refer to on a basis as needed. So Gary, are you online now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to drop off because I'm on the other call too, and I didn't know which end was going to work.
Okay.
Are we still good?
Yeah. Okay,
good. I'm sorry about the video. I'm sharing it here with somebody else right now. Brian Huff originally asked me to review some of the things that you as a city have been going through. And me working with Brian and Kent, we see a lot of similarities. So Brian has been picking my brain a little bit on similar tasks, different tasks at the city of Ravenna, and just asking me originally how I felt things were going. At the city of Ravenna, you actually picked up quality IP on a contract before we did at the city of Kent. And so with Kimball, we were asking some questions of him when I was considering bringing quality IP in to do work and contract work with us. So this is kind of there's been a little bit of a back and forth, but moving forward, I know that you guys had some challenges with projects that had been laid out for you. And Brian came to me and asked me if I'd be willing to come in and help, a little bit and help you guys review projects, give you some advice, independent of vendor relationship or independent of that, just based on, the projects that you have there. So that's why I'm here tonight. I know I met with Mayor Seaman, Andrew was there, and Cheryl was there to initially introduce myself and just let you guys know that I was available to you if you wanted to proceed and go forward with that. I've been in municipal government over 30 years, so I get the government side. I've been doing municipal IP for over 20. So it's quite a breadth of experience. I've seen a lot of the challenges, a lot of the things that come out there. So I can give you an honest, usually an honest opinion or a review or a look back at some of the things you're doing and help you move forward. Is I see it just like I saw in Kent, there's growing pains. Both municipalities had, for a long time, ignored, I won't say ignored, that's not fair, not had to deal with the IT challenges. And as they try to modernize and come on, I've hit these roadblocks, a lot of things in Kent, along with you guys. So there's a lot of things that I was able to share, or I'm able to share with you as well as you need. That where you need me to have, or do you guys have any questions?
So are you like a one-person show, I guess? I mean, as far as, do you have actual staff that works with you, or are you by yourself?
In Kent, I am the IT department. I had to finally bring on quality IP to assist with the day-to-day operations and help desk work and staff. Things were spread out and they weren't looked at top down. A lot of the IT challenges in Kent were handled in the departments themselves without a look or effect across all the departments. I came in and tried to, help them bring this together with somebody that sits over top and helps look at it all and keep things running. And they had a gentleman that had worked there for 23 years prior, a retired police officer who did a good job, but wasn't really an IT person. He did IT work, but wasn't really an IT person. And so to move them forward, I was available. I was retired from the city of Cuyahoga Falls. And I had been doing some work with the city of Kent over quite a few years, actually. And Brian and the previous finance director, Dave Coffey, knew that I was out there available to start helping. So they asked me to come in and do similar to this, some contract work to help them move forward. And that's how I ended up in the role that I'm in there now.
So what is your role? What are you an employee of the city, or are you an independent contractor
for the city of Kent?
I'm sorry?
I am an employee. I am the IT director for the city of Kent.
Full-time position.
Correct.
Okay. My opinion on this is I think it's good. I've voiced my concern similar to what you said about not having an independent voice that we can rely upon, that kind of stands between us and whoever we contract. In this case, it's Quality IP, because we're not the experts and we need somebody we can trust to, decipher or translate what Quality IP is doing and whether or not it's right for us and whatever. The only thing I do have a little concerns of is the process. I mean, normally if the city of Ravenna is going to hire a consultant, we normally go through a similar hiring process that we would with any normal employee, in that, we describe in some fashion what we want out of a consultant and then invite people to apply. And certainly someone with your background and relationship to other municipalities would be a strong candidate for that type of, not necessarily position, but consulting contract. So I'm, with all due respect, and I appreciate your presence here tonight and the information you provided, I think there needs to be a process, more deliberative process, where we actually go through and see who's out there and who's willing to work as a consultant with the city. It may be Gary Bishop, it may be somebody else. I mean, I don't know if other people feel that way, but I think there should be a process.
Right. Yeah, I agree too.
We've always done it that way.
That kind of frightens me is if you're a full-time employee there, how could you be here too?
Because it would only be on part-time basis. It would be just as needed, a per hour, not to.
So this would be
exceed-
in addition with Quality IP?
Yes.
So for
Yes.
example, if we were to, as we were just discussing with the cybersecurity, we answer the questions, that questionnaire determined that we are not up to par as to what he was talking about with cyber insurance. It's up to council to decipher what equipment we need based on Quality IP suggestions. So that's kind of where I envision this, is those big projects that he can, parlay down and explain to us that, yes, this is a good decision or not. I would
I
think,
see what you're saying.
Well, but I think Amy brings up a good point. I mean, as we evaluate people we might want to hire as a consultant, that could be a factor, whether or not they have an independent office with people devoted to, I mean, you're not
Right.
at Kent State, right? I mean, at Kent, the city of Kent, those employees in your department are not subject to your consulting operation. So, and I'm not saying we shouldn't hire you or somebody who already has a full-time job. I'm just saying I think there's a process we typically go through when we engage with a consultant.
Right.
And I do think that that's something we should do.
Right. And our staff works 8 to 4:30, so if you're working there during those hours, would you be able to, talk to our staff during the work hours, if there was questions or stuff like that, so that those are just things that just kind of, I guess I would question. I would worry about, conflicting times with your job and with what the needs might be here.
And I can completely understand your position and how you have the concerns. Email's a wonderful thing. I didn't envision myself being present on site very much. This wasn't to be a help desk break fix
Okay.
kind of thing. This was going to be hey, we're looking at buying this system, this is what we have sitting in front of us for a proposal.
I see what you mean. Okay.
What do you think about this? Is this, a good investment, bad investment thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think Quality IP is going to be, they're still running everything. This is just, like Cheryl was saying, a great example would be these cameras we want to put up. I mean, that's not up to Quality IP. That's not part of their contract to do that. We need someone we can talk to kind of independently. We can get Quality IP involved with it, but they're not involved in the planning process and all that with something like that.
Right.
Another example is what we just went through with the estimate from Quality IP, and then Andrew helped us out tremendously by saving us, what, about $15,000 by finding a different way to purchase equipment. This would be something on those larger projects. We have someone that has our best interest rather than their own, you know, somebody kind of guiding us and giving us information. It's not someone who's going to solve our everyday operation issues. That's what Quality IP's contract is for. But he could also have the expertise to help us write an RFP when it comes time to renew Quality IP's contract, something that none of us have that expertise to do. It's a very part-time, as needed on large scale. And Brian, what were those numbers? It was like when we talked about and not to exceed.
Yeah, so I mean, we were throwing around different numbers. I mean, one of the things we were talking about was a small retainer, like $200, and then, you know, not to exceed a certain number of hours, you know, 10 hours a month, something like that. Or we might break it down more on a yearly basis, because there might be some months we may have a lot more stuff, and then other months we may not have anything. So, you know, we were looking at maybe, you know, 100 and something hours for the year, something like that. So, you know, if you do like we were throwing out $80 an hour, 100 hours for the year, and that's like $8,000 plus a small retainer of some sort. So we're not talking huge dollars here. We're not talking Quality IP dollars here. We're just talking, you know, a lot smaller stuff.
I think hearing from
we haven't settled any numbers yet. I mean, we'd have to talk about all that in more detail.
Right, just kind of tossing ideas around. This was just something that we felt would benefit us, help us to understand, you know, when Quality IP sends us something, we all have different levels of understanding what it is we're looking at from them. And like the last one that came through, and it was something that they threw a curveball, something that we needed, that most of us felt that they should have already addressed that in the initial thing with the phones. I feel like they can easily nickel and dime us, and we don't know the difference.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. What is the retainer for? The retainer fee? What is that? The purpose of the retainer fee?
Oh, we're not set on that. That's just an idea that
I just wondered what the cost was for. I mean, you know,
just to kind of keep them on.
Yeah.
We don't, you know, we could either do that or we could just do a pure hourly rate. I mean, different rate. So we could either pay them a little bit more per hour, or we could do a small retainer and just keep them on and pay them a little bit less per hour. I mean, different ways to go with that.
Do we still go? It sounds like we want to go through the process of putting out the request. You know, actually defining what this position would be. Am I interpreting that wrong, Rob and Amy?
Yeah. It's not. I you know, I think we need to avoid terms like position. I mean, we're talking about a consultant, so it's not like a job description. It's just a description of what our expectations would be for someone like this. And I think it's highly dependent upon what's going on. Like this year, if we had somebody on board, they would have spent a fair amount of time looking at both the phone system and our renewal with Quality IP. So it could have been a labor-intensive year for that person. Next year, with things already in place, it may not require a whole lot of money up, you know, to keep the person on. The one thing I do want to make sure we do is we don't conflict with whatever is in the contract with Quality IP, because I'm sure there's language in there that we have to be careful about when it comes to even consulting somebody or like, you know, if our consultant wants to go in a different direction than Quality IP is prepared to support, there's going to be a conflict there. So it is a delicate balance. But I support the idea. I think the idea of having an independent voice is critical. And it doesn't sound like, from what Brian's describing, it would cost a lot of money to engage someone like Mr. Bishop. So I support the idea. I just do think we need to do a little more due diligence in seeking out the right person for what our needs are. So that might take a little time and effort.
Anyone else?
What would next steps be then? I mean, what are we thinking? I mean, there's a discussion here today. What do you think the next step would be then?
Well, I think itemizing what we expect from the consultant, that it's, you know, an as needed. I think the idea of a retainer is important. If someone was going to sign a contract as a consultant with us, they want some guarantee there's going to be a contract signed and maybe a nominal fee just to get the thing started. I think that's normal. But then laying out, if it's, you know, some things might be project-based costs, some things might be hourly costs, or, you know, and maybe some consultant would prefer just an hourly rate. And then, you know, we quote, and like you said, you know, there might be maximums per month. We're not going to exceed X number of hours or whatever. And then there could be side deals with specific projects. You know, if we wanted somebody, we don't have to go necessarily through an RFP. My whole point with quality IP was I wish we had not necessarily bid it out, but given other companies the opportunity to make their case to us. We don't have to, it looks like we had a determination that we didn't have to go to the bidding process, even though it was above the threshold of $50,000. But there's nothing preventing us from having a competitive process where other companies like Quality IP can present their case and we can have a choice. So a consultant like we're talking about right now would have a big role to play in, you know, guiding us what the qualities are and then evaluating the different proposals. Or if we wanted to go through an RFP process, then yeah, that's a lot more involved, but somebody could actually help us write the RFP. So I think this might have certain levels, and when we ask people to, you know, submit their proposals for us to consider, they could decide how they want to go about. Is it just a strict hour per hour, you know, cost, or is it going to be project based and so forth? I just think we need a little bit of diversity in terms of choosing who the right person might be for the job. And I said job, but I meant consultant.
Anyone else?
I'm good with moving forward, you know, with the idea. I think it's a good idea. And I think, you know, it in the long run could actually save some money as well.
Mhm. Mayor, do you have anything? You're muted.
Okay, maybe there you go.
that we thought that this was somewhat what people wanted. That they wanted somebody that when we sit down the next time and whether we do it the way Rob said, and we do write up a complete description and then have people bid on that. We need somebody that can make that so it's that one size fits all, because when we start getting diverse away from it, then we got apples to donuts, I guess, you know, when we do that. I think we need to go ahead and move this forward. Heather is out for a few days. And of course, if we're going to go ahead and do that, she will be a part of putting together the information on doing that. I don't know I have no idea what the interest will be when we're talking about the limited number of hours that we're talking about. How many people will want to sign up for that? And I don't know the answer to that. Maybe there'd be huge quantities of things. All I know is we went through the entire process correctly, got an individual to hire to replace our previous person, and he came in for a walkthrough, and then we never saw him again after that. And we spent a lot of time landing on that person, thinking he was the best person. And he had the skills, but he knew when he was overmatched too with what was here. So the process works, and sometimes it doesn't work. for what we want to attain, but I really don't know what the interest will be in this given the limited number of hours. The fact that we were looking at Mr. Bishop, he already has a working relationship with IT, but we only did that for a year so that we can address the concerns that Rob and other members of council have on looking at an overall issue and satisfying so that council is comfortable that we've done the proper thing with that. So this was an attempt to get someone in place that can help us prepare that, because with the one-year contract and we're already into it, we have to start doing that stuff early. We can't wait and do it a month before the contracts if we're going to be doing it. Those are just some thoughts going through my head as I'm listening to people with this. But I think that we all agree we need to do something along those lines. I think if we move it forward, it doesn't necessarily mean it might not go to the final council meeting or the first council meeting of the next month. It might take a little longer because we have to advertise and post things so that we can get some people of interest in.
Now, can this be like an administrative decision as far as who you hire? Does it have to be where it comes before council, where we would just, appropriate the funding of it, but it'd be administrative position where
every hire that we have, it's a contract, and council is contract.
you have to, right?
Yeah.
No, Amy, but you're correct. If this was a position,
Right.
Then yes, the administration, the mayor gets to choose whoever they want to hire. But this isn't a position, as I was saying.
It's a contract, right? I understand. I know contract. I was just thinking, like I said, to make maybe the process a little bit an easier process so that, it wouldn't be a lengthy.
Well, it doesn't have to be as, long and like a typical job search. I mean, we could do something as simple as, maybe have Heather look at what other cities have, done in terms of IT consultants, part-time consultants, or whatever you want to call them, and then post something on our website. And I'm sure there's people in our community that might be interested. So, that might fast track it a little bit than going through the normal postings in various places. So there might be some other opportunities besides the normal process.
We try that. Else we can look to move into the more the longer search.
Yeah, I mean, if I can pipe in, the reason we were just looking at Gary too, I mean, he's worked with, well, not only in the municipality environment, several municipalities, he's also worked with QIP, and he's got basically the same systems that we have in Kent that he has in Ravenna. So he's very familiar with how almost everything operates. If you're going to put it out there, I mean, you're going to have to get someone else. If it wasn't Gary, it'd have to be someone else who's similar in statute that's, kind of done this and that and has worked in municipalities and stuff. You can't, I mean, not that there's not other people in the community that don't know IT, but this specific brand of IT is a lot different.
Municipality is a lot different than just typical IT.
And especially with the QIP experience and all that too, and the similar operations between the two entities within the same county, it's an attractive thing to look at. I mean, there probably are others out there, but few and far between.
And someone that's already doing it full time that would be willing to take on the minimal hours just to help us out. I mean, really, that's what he's offering to do, is help us out. The pay is very minimal. It's.
Yeah.
I would imagine they would need leads certification to work with the safety.
Well,
Yep.
I don't, well, again, that's, that's where we're getting a little fuzzy between what we're hiring Quality IP to do and what we're hiring a consultant to do. Yeah, I think it would be great if they did have that certification, but I don't know that that would necessarily be a requirement because they're not going to be doing the actual work. Quality IP is who we're hiring for that.
Well, I know that they would not let, when we got a proposal from 3M, they would not let them into the.
They didn't have the certification.
They didn't have the certification.
Yeah, I understand that. But we're talking about a much higher level consulting, not somebody necessarily who has to get in, roll up their sleeves and dig into servers.
Well, I agree with that. That's exactly what he would not be. That's what we have.
So I think we want to move forward with it. So I guess what does move forward with it mean? Is it up more to the administration at this point, or is it going to have to come back to council, I guess, or what's
I think it's going to have to come back to council. I think we need to get Heather on board. Maybe you could work with Heather, Brian, and help us out with you and the mayor to get her to write up a brief expectation, some of the requirements that we've discussed here, look up maybe more in depth our systems, but definitely needs to be someone who, or the expectations have to be that they understand our systems and that it's a municipality, the security issues that we need to be concerned about, know that we're dealing with, as well as the oversight and work with Quality IP as they are our consultant for the actual day-to-day operations. So I think that's our next steps. And then if we want to bring it back to committee, or if we want to go ahead and move forward to council of the whole, and then just kind of keep it there until we have all of our information. I'll leave that up to Amy and Rob. What are your choices on that?
Well, it would have to happen within a week. And if Heather's off for a couple of days, it's the likelihood of it happening not all that strong. So I think this might be, I think the better plan is to have this come through the next cycle. Okay. So we could have next month's meeting of the IT committee have a little bit more information to put out there. Then I think that we could be on track for even possibly hiring somebody in a quick turnaround by the next, not the October meeting, but the November meeting.
Okay. Gary, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
No, you're welcome. It was a good discussion. Nice to hear it from a different perspective. I'm sitting on the other side of the room than I normally do, I guess, and get to hear a presentation a little differently.
Well, good. I'm glad you were able to join us, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, the administration, for bringing this idea and to us and being, proactive. I think, I think it could be a real good fit with what we need. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Gary.
All right. Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Does anyone else have anything for information systems? Hearing nothing, I'll adjourn this at 6:19.
Hey, is it okay if I start public health and safety? Andrew?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right. 6:15, I will call Public Health and Safety Committee to order. I have several items on the agenda tonight. First one is change in capital improvement SUV lease to purchase option. And this is Chief Wallace. I did talk with Chief Wallace in regards to this item tonight. And I think Brian had some different ideas that's things that maybe we've done in the past to with our SUVs when we've purchased stuff for the police department. So I'm going to turn this over to Brian. in the past, we've always leased the vehicles, but they wanted to do it a little bit different this time and to purchase it, which I'll let Brian explain the benefits and, you know, the reasoning behind this. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, this isn't something we have to do, but this is something I was talking to Chief Wallace about. And to me, I think it's a better idea on some of these purchases when possible, not to try to lease or borrow money for, and save the borrowing and leasing for like much larger projects, like the water meter project that's coming up and stuff like that. Right now we have about $28,000, $20,050 in the budget for these SUVs. That's obviously not enough for all three. Right now I was looking at our unencumbered balance in the 553 fund, which is our capital fund. Right now we have over 1.2 million in there. So to me, for a purchase that's 100,000 or just under 100,000, I don't see the need that we think we need to lease that out. And then we're going to incur administrative costs and interest costs on that. And then you got to keep track of those. It's more difficult on the audits and budgeting every year. So, you know, maybe there was a time a few years ago when money was a lot tighter that this needed to be done. But I think, and it's not even just this one. I mean, I want to look at this more often with our capital purchases, to just purchase things that are not real large in nature and not lease as many things. So I just want to throw it out there to see if that was something others would be interested in.
I like the concept. I mean, I think that you're right. It's just an easier process. And at the same time, we're saving money on interest, fees, and so forth. So I do, you know, and I know that when I talked with Chief Wallace, you know, he was pretty excited of some new ideas. So Chief, is there anything you'd like to say on this?
Just the fact that the vehicles we're replacing are 2013 Chargers. So we've had them for 7 years, and all three of them have over 100,000 miles each, probably pushing up closer to 115 each. So that's, if you think about it, that's quite a bit of driving in a 5 square mile city, and with the amount of work and stuff. So we do take care of our stuff, our equipment, and when we do replace it is because it is needed, not because we're just looking to replace something to get something new. And I had this discussion with Brian a couple weeks ago about vehicles, and we were talking about needs versus wants, and the vehicles that we used just recently to replace our DB vehicles, those had been cycled through a couple different times, and we actually ended up getting used vehicles to replace those vehicles. We got 2017s that had about 37,000 miles, but they're really good vehicles. So I think Brian was surprised to find out that we were maximizing the use of these vehicles and keeping them pretty nice until they were no longer serviceable. So the 3 vehicles that we're replacing have reached their end of life, and they're starting to be cost us quite a bit of money to service. So that's why we want to replace the 3 of those Chargers and get the 2021 SUVs.
And Chief, real quick, is this state term pricing?
Yes, those are every time we buy a vehicle, those vehicles, the patrol vehicles, that's all state bid price. So that's the lowest price we can get for the vehicle.
So the amount we're looking to appropriate is, where's my tracking sheet? Was it about 100,000? Is that what you said? I can't find my.
Yeah, you're right. It is just under 100,000, but we already have $28,050 in there, so it'd be minus that amount.
So like around 80,000, 75,000.
Yeah, or just
Okay.
around 70,000. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask, what is the term? This is a lease to purchase?
No.
Right? It isn't?
This is a purchase. So we wouldn't be leasing it like we've done in the past. We would actually be purchasing.
Oh, okay.
These 3.
This isn't the agenda, lease to purchase.
Yeah. Because in the past.
Yes, I know what
Yeah,
Rob's saying, because that is a term you use when you heard, okay, no.
okay, so you're out now buying these, okay.
Change it from
So-
lease to.
Okay, yeah, because I was trying to figure out what the lease terms were. All right, I'm down with this. This is a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I like I said, I think it's something different, and it doesn't hurt to try something different sometimes. So, Matt Harper, do you
I
have
guess
what is your thoughts?
my question would be, can we use any of the safety levy funds for this type of purchase? Do we have any, what's the,
Well, yes, we could. That's probably another discussion we need to have with these safety purchases in general. We do have a separate safety levy. It is a part of the general fund. So in something like this, we could either use those funds or the 553 funds.
But those funds, I thought, Brian and Matt, the safety levy is more, I mean, I know we could use it, but one of the big things when we had passed this levy was, that we were saving jobs. The general fund, you have, paychecks coming out of the general fund, where the capital approved is a little different funding. That money is set aside, allocated for purchases. So I would be a little hesitant on touching the safety levy money for that. I would tend to lean more towards the CI or the 553 fund.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you, Amy. That in the past, that's the way it's been done. All the salaries, 100% of them is charged to the general fund.
Right.
Safety levy comes in, and in the past, there have not been capital purchases from
Did that help your question, Matt?
yeah, I get that, but I know that even as the fire department roof, I think we can look at some of these costs and consider using some of that because the levies were written so that it could be used for other than salaries. I know salaries is a huge part of it, but it's
We don't want to lay any cops off. We don't want to have to lay any of our safety forces off.
We need to watch everything across the board, and that's just something I think we need to consider.
Okay. Rob, any thoughts?
Well, like I said, I think this is a good idea, and if it'll save us some money in the long run, I think we should do it.
Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead and move this forward. Okay. And I apologize for some of the engines that are revving up. I can't seem to catch my mute button in time, so I do apologize on some of the sound effects here. Okay, second item on the agenda is approval to apply for a grant from Firehouse Subs. Chief Chappell.
Yes, it's yeah, I had unmuted. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, it's a grant that opens up October 1st. It's if you're in I want to say somewhere in the 20 or 25 air mile range of a Firehouse Sub, it qualifies you to apply for this grant. They had a cap at $50,000, but of course with COVID coming around, they're saying that they want to try to limit the grants to a maximum of $25,000. What I would like to try to do is to write the grant for the extrication equipment that we're going to need for our new engine, which is roughly around 20 to 25,000. And if we do that, that could take away some of the funding that we would have to put into the $635,000 for the new engine.
Okay, great. Is there any type of match with this?
There is no match. It's 100% funding.
Okay. Rob and Matt, do you have a problem with them applying?
Not at all.
Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead and approve that. Send that to finance. Last item, the appropriate of $20,000 for the fire station roof replacement. And I did speak with Chief Chappell on this weekend. This is something that does not have to be bid out. after, he has worked with several roofing companies, well, 2 recently, and this last one is the one that that has been very involved in trying to figure out what they could do, whether to fix it, whether to replace it. And after several discussions in our last meetings, we've talked about we might, since the money was there, to go ahead and replace the roof. This is, he didn't want to push it back any farther because, you're looking in November. This is something that really can't wait until wintertime to try to get this done, because then we could be looking at other issues. And, he was very comfortable on using the contractor that he has. Do you want to say anything else, Chief?
The company that has given me the quote, they actually do all the metal fabricating at their facility. They have the capabilities of doing the fabricating at their facility. Castle Roofing finally got back to me today, and he apologized. He said that I can't give you a quote right off the bat because he doesn't have the capabilities of doing that work at his facility. So it'd even be one, it may be additional cost to have somebody else fabricate, plus a time sensitive factor of can they get the information back to us with a quote and the time frame that we want to keep moving forward. I did talk to Brian in finance. He agreed that we would rather try to, he agrees with not putting good money after bad. And that ultimately, they gave us a couple options. They wanted to put a liquid membrane on the roof, was one option that even Warren said that they could do. And it saves you about $8,000. He told us we could probably get about 5 years off that, doing that, but there's no warranty on it. But again, in 5 years from there, the max, we would ultimately be putting that metal decking, not metal decking, it's called the metal panels back on those, on the current decking that we have. So, and talking with Brian and telling him that, it's roughly 20,000, he thought that, and he can add, butt in whenever he wants, but thought that we would be able to come up with the funding to complete that project the way it needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree, because when we were talking earlier about it, we were going to throw $1,500 at it, and that was, you're just going to have to do a new roof again next year, which would be $1,500 plus another $20,000.
And plus, he's going to be getting some money back. That, remember, we had talked about some of the money that you were going to use, Chief, for something else. I can't think off the top of my head.
We took $12,000 for the hose, but we ended up only spending $7,500.
Right.
So some of that money is going to be going back. So that,
lessens the amount we're taking out. So I don't have a problem in moving this forward and getting this done so that it can start here and hopefully be done by November. Matt and Rob, what are your thoughts on this? Do you want to move it forward?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just want to make sure we understand that it's the higher estimate that seems to be the appropriate one. I'm not even sure I understand the other one.
Yes.
It'd be helpful if is Bob Finney able to comment on it? I mean, it seems what we were expecting and reasonable to me.
Bob Finney.
Yeah, what did I say?
Yeah, you said Bob Finney. Engineering?
Yeah, the roof absolutely needs to be replaced. We have no plan to replace the fire station or the police station. If we were to even form a committee to start looking, it would probably take 5 years, which I don't see that happening. So let's put a roof on it, that section, and let it last our lifetime.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Matt Harper, what are your thoughts? Are you okay that I move this forward?
Definitely needs to be done before winter.
Okay. Okay. We'll move this forward. Thank you, Chief Chappell, for all your help and time that I know you've had to put into this. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. You're welcome.
Okay. Any other updates to come before public health and safety?
Not tonight.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. we'll go ahead and I will adjourn this meeting. And Andrew, if you could tell me the time, because I don't have a clock in front of me out here.
6:35.
Okay, 6:35. Thank you.
All right, 6:35, I'll call the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting to order. I have 2 items on the agenda for consideration this evening. The first item, we've had a resident at the end of Wood Bend Drive that has numerous cars turning around in the drive. So we've looked at some options. One of the options to solve this problem is to put a cul-de-sac at the end instead of just being a dead end where nobody can turn around. Patrick did a quick drawing. I did talk to Mr. Finney about this, and I'll let him go ahead and explain a little bit further.
The drawing that Pat and I worked on was a simple, quick and dirty cul-de-sac. Can we get a cul-de-sac at the end of Wood Bend that the fire truck can negotiate, which is a 90-foot diameter circle? And when we laid it out, there would be property that would have to be acquired or donated. I would not be in favor of purchasing land. I did speak to the mayor and service director today. We're going to go back to the drawing board and see if we can come up with another scenario that's less costly. So ultimately, this was a discussion item to see if we wanted to move forward. If whatever we do will end up being in the paving, potentially in the paving program next year for 2021. So it was more of a discussion. We had told the resident that we would talk to council, so that's what we're doing.
I have a question, Bob. I know it's dead end, and then there's I believe, a road, like a driveway. Isn't there something like a block or that a property that's blocking a road to go in and out? At one time, wasn't there going to be a road, I thought, that would be an exit onto Main Street there?
Albert Side Boulevard at the bank that
Yeah.
connects to Main Street. Those 2 roads are lined up, but I do not imagine the folks on Wood Bend would want that connected. That would be the logical option.
Right.
However, Wood Bend was developed by a developer. The city didn't pitch in or pay for that road. So I'm not necessarily in favor of connecting. We have utilities that run through the road that runs east and west, or the paper street, which is Highland Avenue, does run east and west. The associations use that as a driveway to get to the swimming pool off Bryn Mawr.
Right.
So
okay.
We do land back there. There is a property that seems to be blocking the cul-de-sac, but as I said, again, we would have to acquire some land if we were to do that. Maybe it can be a simple turnaround rather than extending the road a little bit with a little turnaround versus a whole cul-de-sac. We were trying to accommodate the fire truck if it did come to the end of the road, because they would have to back up all the way, which obviously takes time.
Okay.
I know when that development was designed a long time ago, a lot of the residents did object for that street going all the way through toward Main Street. And that's a big reason why it stopped where it did.
I think if it's more logical though, to extend the road through and they want a solution to keep people from turning around in their driveways, then that we have to explore that option heavily, especially if it's going to be a cost savings and easier solution for us.
Bob, are you saying that we don't own the street, that we could just decide to do that? What Cheryl just said?
We own the right of way to build streets, to build the street, but the cul-de-sac being so round, would spill over onto, the bank owns majority of the properties. I doubt they would object. There is one particular owner that, again, we haven't approached. It's just showing the benefit to her would be she would have frontage now on an improved street, potentially have a sellable lot.
But I just want to make sure the whole purpose of this is a safety concern, not a nuisance concern, because I'm confused between the neighbors saying cars are coming in and using driveways to turn around, and then the idea of a radius to turn a fire truck around. I mean, I think the safety concern is certainly important, but I think maybe it was Matt or somebody mentioned that there's other dead end streets, and are we going to start going down the road of improving a bunch of, no outlet streets because neighbors don't like people turning around in their driveways?
Right. Well, the primary concern that the resident had was large trucks, be it furniture trucks or delivery trucks having to turn around. And even our street department has to back down the road quite a distance. Obviously it does, and garbage trucks, and the bigger box trucks, recycle trucks, that sort of thing. So if we're gonna build a cul-de-sac, we need to accommodate the safety vehicles, and that's the diameter that they would require to turn around the larger vehicles.
I guess my only point is I live on the same street, same type of street.
Right, me too.
Have to back out, city trucks have to back out. But I mean, there's so little traffic, it hasn't been a hazard that I've noticed.
Right.
And I just don't know if we can afford to start spending $50,000 on every dead end road in the city.
I agree.
I agree.
Because when you do for one, there's gonna be others that are gonna pop up and want the same thing.
And it'll pop up quick.
Mm-hmm. I just don't think that it's a priority at this time. I live in the same type of situation.
Yeah, you do.
There's constantly, I feel like I'm always the last one to get plowed because they don't want to have to back all the way down my street. But it's also an advantage too. I live at the end. We get a turnaround here or there, but we also have a very quiet street. So I think you have to, not everybody can have a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Very good. I
Fair enough.
appreciate the discussion. Does anybody else have anything to add at this time? If not, we will go ahead and table this consideration for right now and look at some possible alternative solutions. Next item is the donation of some street lamps to Grove City. I believe these are some lamps that we were going to purchase that we could not use. And again, I'll turn this over to Mr. Finney to let him explain this, because this has been going on for quite some time.
We received 8 street lamps to install, and Bob Rummel on 2 different occasions tried to install one of these. It did not, in the end, it did not fit. The company invoiced us, and I refused to pay it. I told them I would they can pick those lights up. There's 8 complete lights, globe, fixture, and the actual LED is built into them. We've had these now for well over a year at the annex, and they did send an email stating that we can dispose of them however we want. So I have that in writing. Grove City happens to have these exact fixtures and stated that they were willing, they would like them. I have it in writing from their service director requesting these, being that it's some degree an asset. We did not pay for them. We have the ability to send them to auction or donate to another government entity. So that's what I would like to do. I will say, I asked Chelsea to send an email blast out to the clerk of councils, and Grove City was the only one that responded. I'm willing to just get rid of these things, and they'll come and pick them up from us. Of course, there's no cost associated. So in essence, this ordinance is just donating an asset that we did not pay for.
That was very thoughtful. I'm glad we were able to find somebody.
Get rid of them.
Right.
Value to somebody, not to us.
I'd also like to thank you, Mr. Finney, in the lesson on how to write an email. William, I have no intention of paying this invoice. I like that a lot. I took a lesson from that. Thank you.
I was as blunt as I could possibly be.
Yes, it was good though. It was good.
Okay, so if there's no objections, we'll go ahead and move this forward and donate these lamps to Grove City.
Move it forward.
We have a management update.
I will say just real quick, Bob Rummel and I we've tested from the streetlight standpoint, we've tested about 6 bulbs, different manufacturers, different styles, different types. And we finally settled on, we kind of went back to the basic, what he's been utilizing. We found a Philips bulb that he's installed in 4 lights, which are behind Eric Hummel's building on the alley. So like I said, right now we've got about 5 different lights installed. We've got different ones in front of the post office, Eric Hummel in front of Melissa Rubik's, and then also along the alley, Ted Manfress's building. We finally settled on a Philips. They actually are in stock. I'm waiting for a globe availability now. So we're gonna just do the retrofit. So I had $100,000 budgeted for this project. We're gonna come in considerably less than that. I'm gonna guess somewhere about $50,000, $60,000. The light bulbs themselves are about $8,500 for 152 light bulbs. And they are actually in stock in a warehouse in Pennsylvania. So as we all have come to know during this COVID, manufacturing and supply and materials are pretty difficult. So fortunately, these are actually available. So we hope to move forward. I have no idea how long it's going to get the globes, if they have to manufacture them or if they're in a warehouse somewhere.
Good. Thanks for the update. Okay. If there's nothing else, I will adjourn the Streets and Sidewalk Committee at 6:50.
Paul, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. All right, 6:50, I'll start the utility meeting. The first thing on the agenda would be to get bids for the chemicals used in water treatment and wastewater for the 2021 calendar year. These chemicals, a lot of them are required by the EPA. A couple of them or so are not. They're optional, but they're very beneficial. So this would need to be done, I'll just say in the near future. That way, these can be purchased for the next calendar year. So if there are any questions or anyone wants to know exactly what the chemicals are and what they do, I can get that information if anyone has a request for that.
Seems like something important to move forward.
It's a requirement by the EPA with practically every chemical. Okay, then sounds like there are no other questions or statements. Then the next thing on the agenda would be 2 sewer cameras. And something I wasn't given any information for is, are these breaking down? What's the reason for replacement? That's something I wasn't given. So if Mr. Finney has any information on that.
Yeah. I've worked with Chuck and Jason on this proposal. Doheny Company, I believe, who's been supplying our cameras and repairing our cameras. And it seems quite often when our cameras are down, it takes them months to make the repair, and often sent back not repaired the way it should be. The sewer camera that the street department currently uses was pretty expensive. And it's also very frustrating when they don't have it because they need it, they use it quite often. So we had another company provide us, they paid us a visit and they showed us their camera. We got to feel it, touch it, play with it, that sort of thing. And they've been in business for 40 years, 30 years, something like that. They actually started in business making locators and built from there. They've had cameras for, I believe, close to 30 years. And they're half the price of the other camera. So the price, and this is actually for 2 cameras. So this is a push camera, which goes into smaller laterals. And then also the big camera that drives through the sewer pipes and that sort of thing. So the price that we were given has multiple wheels that can be changed out for different sizes and that sort of thing. But beyond that, they guarantee if something happens to our camera, they'll give us a loaner the same day and then take ours and fix it, which Doheny does not do. So in essence, we will not be without a camera based on their policy. And they have several of these in stock at all time. Some are used, of course, as a loaner, but that's at least we would be able to connect to it with the new equipment, connect right to it and go to, utilize it in that fashion. So I know Chuck has wanted something like this for a little while, a few years. I don't know how many years, and it had been in a budget and got pulled out of the budget, that sort of thing. But again, I'm asking to appropriate $45,000 from the sewer and storm fund, since the cameras are used in both, and move this forward.
And I'll just make a comment. I know from my own past experience, this is two very, very important pieces of equipment, and they're critical that you can get information real quick by using these. So it doesn't take days or anything of that nature. You can get the information right now once they're used, because the information can be brought back. You can see on a computer what's actually going on, and to keep that information for a while. So if anyone has any questions about those.
I have a question. So Bob, you said that there were 2 cameras, but in the quote, I see quantity 1. Is that, maybe am I misreading that?
Geez, let me see here.
I mean, there's something else for a little under $6,000, but it looks like it says add-on to the P550. Are those 2 separate things, or did they just, I mean, why does it say quantity 1?
The 2-inch camera head is the push camera. And then the spring sonde. So the $3,800, I think, is what it is. My lighting in here is not very good. So the big camera is $46,000, and then they're discounting 20%. You're looking at the invoice or the quote, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So then I think it's $3,800 or or 5,800, it's 5,800, I'm sorry. So the $5,800 is for the push camera, the 2-inch push camera.
Oh, okay. All right. So they are two different cameras. So what's the nature of the discount other than it conveniently lowers it below a bidding price?
Well, considerably lower from 50,000 down below. Yeah. That was, they just said, hey, we've got these in stock and we'll drop the price. I don't know if it's, I didn't even ask them why they were discounting it to this point. The one of the reasons we can save a little bit of money, I believe we save about $3,000, is we're using our existing locator because it fits with these cameras. So we don't have to buy a new locator. Our locator will work. So again, there's some savings there.
But we're handing over the cameras we have, right, as trade-ins for them?
Correct.
All right, good enough.
Okay, if that is all, then that will end the utilities committee. And I was going to ask if there's a management update pertaining to these two subjects.
No, I will add though, we opened the water meter bids on September 10th and received 4 bids.
Oh, when will those bids be concluded?
Mike's in the process of going through each one and tabulating to make sure the math is correct and everything. At the time of opening on the high end from Ferguson Waterworks, it was $2,213,000. NECO was the lower end at $1,807,000.
What were the other two companies?
Vanguard was at $1,999,000, and Newman Plumbing, they were bidding for Badger meters and they came in at $1,987,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that will conclude the utility meeting at 6:58.
Okay, so it's 6:58 and I'd like to call the planning committee to order. We have 3 items on the agenda as presented, and I'd like to add one regarding the cemetery. So we can add that to the end so we can get through these others first. The first 2 are simply some grants through Target, and I think both of them are for the soccer program from the Parks and Rec Department. There is in the packet information, I believe, about the $500 grant. I don't have any information about the other one, other than the tracking sheet. So
Is there a match?
There doesn't seem to be one for the $500. Like I said, I don't have.
It's probably not. Usually Target doesn't require matches in the past, from what I remember.
Well, on the tracking sheet, it says this $500 matching grant will defer the cost of operating supplies and marketing costs.
Well, that's right. That one does say that. I'm sorry, I didn't notice.
Yeah, the $1,000 grant says the same thing, matching grant.
Is it? Oh my God, I can read these. Matching grant. Okay. But it doesn't,
Okay.
Does that mean a 1-to-1 matching? In other words, we have to come up with $500 to match the $500 grant?
We probably have that much since it will be related to operating supplies, costs, coaches training, scholarship opportunity. We probably certainly spend that much already.
The $500 grant does have a budget, and it's well exceeds $1,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't know what the other one provides, but maybe we can get some more information about the exact matching grant. I assume it'll be okay, but maybe we can get a few more details for the committee of the whole. Any objection to moving this forward? But we'll just move them both forward. They're pretty much the same.
Absolutely.
2 different amounts.
It's fine.
Then the third item is a donation of seeds from Home Depot, and I think we've gotten these before. Again, there's not a whole lot of information. The value is $534, and I know we've used them in various ways for various programs, Parks and Recs in the past. I think, isn't there some sort of spring program that we usually?
The butterfly garden, I think, and
I don't recall exactly what it was, but I remember we had gone through the same thing last year. So, you know, as our old friend Bruce Ryblin would say, we'll
take it and run.
Johnny Appleseed will take the seeds and run.
Yeah.
Plant them across the city.
Spread your seeds.
So then moving along, the last item is the cemetery, update on the cemetery. Before we have any discussion about it, I think Andrew wanted to mention a couple of things.
Yeah, and I don't know much about a discussion, but mainly asking council two things. The first, I received a letter. It was a complaint letter about the Maple Grove. So I wanted to summarize that. I will send this letter around along with pictures to council because it's pretty lengthy. The takeaway is, though, and this came from Miss Amy McIntyre, she has family buried there, and you know, some of the statements in here, she feels that things are not well taken care of and a better job could be done. I'm sure we've heard this from other people. There's some specific questions within this complaint, you know, asking why it takes 5.5 weeks to mow in the summer. There's some other statements in here, like if the city workers help on Memorial Day, why are the grounds looking the way they do? Many of the how many mowers and weed eaters do the staff have to use? Why is it that the full-time workers above are using a weed eater? Is that is part-time worker work? So there's some specific questions in here. I wanted to at least summarize that because I told Amy I would for council. I will send this around with the photos of Maple Grove that she's referring to. And I think this is something, you know, we've heard before. We'll tackle, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be a conversation. I think the one that's front and center is, you know, what we saw recently in the paper. If I could, and Mayor, feel free to jump in, but I think we had that conversation with the township a couple weeks ago now to talk about many things, one of which was the cemetery, but it was, you know, seeing where we could come together and work together, you know, not only on the economic development director, but, you know, a JED or the fire district, and it just wasn't something that was going anywhere. And they made that very clear when they saw the report out, I guess, at our regular city council meeting. So what I wanted to ask council was for the only way that they will get out of this agreement, if council chooses to, is within the joint meeting between council and a township trustee. So my ask to council is if we could take a look at our schedules. I would like to send a couple dates to them that we can set a date and have township trustees come to City Hall and you know, at least make the request of council in person. So that's what I wanted to ask, and we could do that, you know, taking a look at our schedules and come together either next week with a firm couple of dates to send their way, or we can do that via email. It doesn't matter how it happens to me. I just want to have these conversations now, especially about getting out of a contract that they are requesting that we have to consent to in the public forum. So that's what I wanted to come to council.
And Andrew, I just had a question for yourself pertaining to this. I was wondering if you wanted Mark Gabriel to give some answers to some of those questions, or I have some of them myself. Or was that going to come up later at this meeting?
No, I don't think, I'm not speaking for the rest of council, but for me, I wasn't going to try and answer those tonight.
Okay, no, I wasn't going to ask you to speak for council.
Yeah, no, depending on, you know, the final decision, it could change the answers too, on how this all unfolds, you know, and what moving forward, what those answers look like. So
Well, what I was referring to is some of the questions that came in the form of the letter. That's what I was.
We will
I
work.
think those are two different issues, right? I mean, one is the
Yes.
complaint letter, and the other is the township's request
To
leave.
be removed.
Yeah. You know, I have some concerns about what that even means. I mean, this is a specific type of arrangement. I don't even know what the city would be liable for if we did that. But and I do think that there was some misconceptions presented in that article. It seemed like most of the information was just what, you know, provided by a township trustee. And
Yes.
and I think, you know, some things need to be clarified to this extent that, you know, there's concern over representation. Well, you know, the fundamental fact is 20 years or 25 years ago, whenever the original contract was drawn up, it was set up as a specific type of cemetery called, I mean, we're referring to it as a union cemetery. And the Ohio Revised Code is very specific about some of the components of it. Like the cost sharing is determined by property, you know, that each entity owns, or not owns, but is within their districts. That there's only 3 trustees. I mean, there's concern about an imbalance, but yet that's what they agreed to, that 2 people on this board of trustees would be from the city and 1 from the township. That's the way it's always been. So I just do have some concerns that there's some misconceptions. I mean, this was an agreement that was made, and now finances are getting tough. The last thing I'll say, and I know this isn't something that we really want to discuss too much in any detail, but I just want to, and I don't want to discuss it in detail, I just want to put it out there. In my reading of what this type of cemetery is, they were designed in such a way that a city and township, or multiple cities and multiple townships, could get together to help run a cemetery. But the fundamental principle, well, I shouldn't say principle, but just component of this type of cemetery is the allowance of property tax. That the entities, the city and township, can get together and impose a levy, a tax, without going to the public for approval, of up to 10 mil. So why, and it's even in our contract that how we could go about doing that. It's just never been exercised. And I'm not suggesting we now consider that, but I think that's where things have broken down. We set up a type of cemetery, but we didn't really include all the components of it when it was established. So many years later, when there are financial problems, these things naturally arise. So anyway, I think it's a good idea to meet with the township and have an open discussion about what the concerns are, about how it's being run, whether there are some efficiencies, but also sort of a level-headed discussion about what this contract is, and what it was established for, and how we go forward. Anyway, so anybody else have a comment? If not, I think that's, unless there's a management update or anything the mayor wants to mention.
Rob, first of all, I would like to thank you. I thought you did a great job putting that together and getting the information out and disseminating it. And I hope everybody reads it so that they understand that. The other issue on that is that the township took the city to court at one time because it was completely run by the township. When all was said and done, the court's decision was that the city of Ravenna almost circled all of the cemetery and should be the ones that would take care of the cemetery, and turned it over to us as our responsibility. The township then later, and I don't know what later is right now, that's one thing I'll have to check on, approached the city about, let's have a union cemetery and we'll share the cost with you. Because of course, people from the township and the city are buried in this cemetery. And it's an important part of our city. And it does pain me when it's not in top-notch shape. I think that's a responsibility that we should enjoy doing. I think that there's a couple of things that I want to reread the information that Rob gave us on that. But we do need to have some sort of a conference or talk with the township trustees. At the meeting that we held, there was not a quorum from either the city or the township. It was just set up to have some basic discussion about the problems with that. I'm not going to belabor this anymore. We'll have plenty of time to talk about this. But this is not a small issue, it's an important issue. And you will have the interest of people in the township and in the city because their relatives are buried in that cemetery and they want it to be first rate.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else have anything to add to the planning committee meeting?
I do have a question. Right, a minute ago, Mayor, you mentioned thanking Rob for putting together the information out and hope everyone reads that. What information is that?
He looked up and copied all of the statutes and state statutes for putting together a union.
Did we receive that?
I can see if I can forward that out to everybody. And then I've also got some additions to it too. The original, law court finding, I believe if you want to make it easy to remember, I believe it was on February 14th, 1997. So that's when it actually, went into place. So it's an easy date to remember, but Mr. Calfee, I'll send that to everybody, make sure everybody gets it along with the additional links that I have as well.
Yeah, I did send something out, but I didn't check who the recipients were. I was responding to a previous email. So we'll make sure everyone gets a copy. And it wasn't comprehensive. It was parts of the Ohio Revised Code that are relevant to our discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, then at 7:13, I will adjourn the planning committee meeting.
7:14, the Personnel Committee meeting will come to order. We have one item that's up for consideration tonight, and that's changing the current pay grade for the administrative assistant position to the mayor and to the service director. I did want to mention, since this item does concern the employment or compensation of an employee, that I would request that we go into executive session for discussion of this item.
You have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to go into executive session for this topic.
Second.
Kind of a point of order I'm not sure about is whether people outside the committee can make the motion. I'm not.
Okay.
So I would just suggest, just for whatever sake, that we have the, maybe Matt and Christina.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
I'll second that, Matt.
And Mayor, real quick, after we come out of executive session, nothing else is going to be decided. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Calfee. Nothing else will be decided.
Yeah, that's the only item we're discussing.
Mayor, is there any management update you want to make now before we?
Muted.
You're muted, Mayor.
Trying to, there you go.
What I was saying, if you at what point are you going to decide to move it on or not move it on? Because at that point, you have to be in session.
I think he's asking, should we come back to committee and
to move it on to
whether you did, so.
All right, well, we'll test out YouTube
business.
Yeah.
We do have to conduct some business, or the committee does.
Well, let me stop the live stream, make sure it's stopped. And
We need a roll call to go into executive session.
All right, Matt?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Ms. Michaels?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yeah.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi?
Yes.
all right, let me stop the live stream real quick.